The Tolkien Road, episode 185, Second Age Deep Dive, The Mariner's Wife, Part 2. Hello everyone, welcome to The Tolkien Road, episode 185. Second Age Deep Dive continues with The Mariner's Wife, Part 2. Greta, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, John?
I am good.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So, Mariner's Wife.
Part 2.
Part 2.
Yep.
This is just an artificial break, obviously. There's no real parts to this story. It's just one long story, but it was too much to do in one episode, so we're doing 4 episodes.
Oh.
Yeah,
four.
Because we take a long walk through Middle-earth. A long walk.
We take the scenic route.
That's right. Yeah, if Aldarion can take 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year voyages, then why can't we spend 4 episodes on this one? Word.
That's what I'm saying.
Hey, shout out to our newest patron over on Patreon, Tyler W.
Tyler,
thank you so much for your pledge of support. Don't forget, you too can become a patron if you're not already. Don't forget to pledge $1 or more per episode by heading over to patreon.com/TolkienRoad. And you can set a monthly limit when you do it so that you don't go over that monthly limit, even if we put out like 20 episodes, which we won't do, but just, worst case scenario, if we just got totally crazy and just started recording an episode every day. So you can set limits on it or not. You can choose to just give us all your money too. So
that would be fine.
Works. Yeah. But we'd probably feel kind of bad if you couldn't eat. So try to find somewhere in the middle of those two things.
Balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Patreon, you get new episodes early, over 40 bonus videos not available elsewhere, and you get freebies. You get cool stuff that you wouldn't if you were not a patron. I think I said that right. Kind of mix myself up with my negatives there.
Yeah, it always gets me too.
So rate us on iTunes as well. That's the other way, super special way that you can help us out, and that really helps us get the word out there about the show. So please leave us a 5-star rating and say some nice things about us. And then we'd love to hear from you at TolkienRoadPodcast@gmail.com, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. So
do it.
That's all the things.
Yep.
We have a speak pipe.
Yay!
From David Walsh of the Card Talk podcast.
Sweet.
So make sure this is rewound. All right. Here we go. Here's David.
Hey, Carswells. This is Dave Walsh from Card Talk, and I was excited to hear your latest podcast where you were talking about the word or the Elvish root menel, and you asked whether menel meant air or whatever, and I was interested myself because when I play the card game, there's an eagle whose name is Meneldor, who is also mentioned in the literature, and he is a named eagle that rescued Frodo and Sam after they threw the ring into the fires of Mount Doom. And so when you asked, is Menel or Menel a word that means air, I immediately was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense because Meneldor is an eagle who is named in the game. And I looked it up, and sure enough, the root Menel, both in Quenya and Sindarin, does mean air or the area above Arda. And so that's why you have Menel Tarma and Meneldor. And the Meneldor that you were talking about was obviously this Númenorian, but it was exciting to see that there's always these connections between what you're doing with your podcast and what we do in with mine in the game, and it was super exciting. So keep up the good work, and we'll talk to you later.
All right, thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thank you.
Great to hear from you, and thanks for looking that up. Thanks for doing that research. I based on our discussion last time, I guess I probably would have been surprised if it wasn't the root, but it's good to have it confirmed, and that's cool about the connection with the eagle.
Yeah,
I was thinking to myself, and I wasn't sure if you were implying this, Dave, if it's actually that's the name of the eagle just in the card game, or if it's actually in the book as well. So, and I didn't look that up.
I think he said it was mentioned in the literature.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and he was saying air as in like the air we breathe, not like the heir to the throne. Is that
right?
correct?
Okay. Yeah, because remember we were saying like Menel Tarma is the pillar of heaven, right? And
yes.
And then you've got Meneldur, the Tarmaneldur, the king of Númenor, who's all about studying the stars, right? Studying the sky.
Yes. Right. Okay. That makes sense.
I'm gonna do a quick search here on Tolkien Gateway. See what it comes up with about Meneldur. Let's see. Is there any word of the eagle? Eagle. Let's see here. Eagle. Trying to see if I can find a reference to it. Here we go. Several of them rescued Frodo and Sam from Mount Doom after the One Ring had been destroyed, but it doesn't say what their names were here. So I don't know. I wasn't clear on that from his message. It sounds like you were, but I was not. So anyway, I can check it afterward. It'd be an easy thing to check later on.
Yeah.
So.
Cool.
But thanks, Dave, and thanks for the note.
Thank you very much.
Dave was on this episode because he used SpeakPipe. And you always get to the front of the line with your messages. No waiting on the next mailbag episode.
It's your fast pass, peeps.
That's right.
Yeah.
So.
And it's free. It doesn't cost a gazillion dollars like the ones at the amusement parks. The fast passes.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about SpeakPipes at the amusement parks, and I'm like, what?
Oh, no, I was talking about fast passes.
Oh, okay.
I was doing a, what's that word?
Well, you can see why I was confused.
Analogy.
Yeah.
The SpeakPipe is like a fast pass. Jump the line. Okay.
Nice.
Yep. Moving on.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We do have a lot of mail starting to pile up on the Mariner's Wife. So we're probably going to do 4 episodes on this. So 2 more to go after this one, and so after we're done with these 4 episodes, we'll do a mailbag episode pertaining to the Mariner's Wife.
So we're getting a lot of mail about. We've already gotten a lot of mail about the Mariner's Wife?
Yeah, decent amount.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
That's very cool.
And other things, but...
Now, just to remind myself, this story, it could be part of Latron Prime.
It could be. I mean,
it takes place in Númenor. It's the Second Age.
Right, but I don't think it... I think it's unlikely that it will be, because... I think it could probably be referenced... Okay. But I don't find it likely that they're going to make this story, because the really interesting story... I shouldn't say that. The story that's going to be the most... That's likely to... That's going to make the easiest kind of like case that this is a prequel to the Lord of the Rings, that this is truly a prequel to the Lord of the Rings, and it has that continuity with the Lord of the Rings, is... the story of the downfall of Númenor into the last alliance, right?
Okay.
The alliance of men and elves against Sauron. So, I think Sauron is likely to be the main bad guy of the show, right? So
that makes sense.
It could be. We don't know it. We really don't know anything except that it's taking place in the Second Age. But this story takes place a long time before the downfall of Númenor.
I see.
So
okay.
Yeah. So anyway, make that next mailbag if you got some ideas or thoughts that you want to share with us about this story or any other Tolkien matter. Shoot it over to tolkienroadpodcast@gmail.com, or you can contact us through tolkienroad.com and through the contact form there. So, all right. So part 2 of The Mariner's Wife. So when we left off last time, it was the year 858, and Aldarion and Erendis had just been betrothed. So, and then Aldarion is of course he will eventually become the 6th king of Númenor, right? And but we're picking up in the year 858. No wedding date is set. Just kind of brief synopsis of everything that happens in this story before we discuss it. No wedding date is set after 3 years, right? So 3 years go by and there's no wedding date set.
And that's like breaking etiquette.
Right. And then, it turns out that Aldarion wants to go to sea again. And so he asks Erendis to wait a few more years. She refuses. Then he asks her to marry him now and go to sea with him. She also refuses that. And finally, he just leaves for another long voyage. So when he returns, they do finally get married. And a group of elves come and give them a special tree and elven birds as a wedding gift. They have a daughter named Ankalame. And Aldarion continues to think of the sea and constructs a mighty vessel that some call the Wooden Whale. And Aldarion goes to sea again for 2 years. During that time, Erendis moves to the sheeplands of Emeria with Ankalame because she can't stand the sight of trees any longer because trees are used to make ships. So she can't stand the sight of trees. She can't stand the sight of the sea, so she moves to the sheeplands. So
because she can stand the sight of sheep.
Yeah. So sheep's all she got left, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could do worse.
So that's kind of an overview of this section of the story. So, really the two main characters that are in focus throughout this story are the titular characters, Aldarion and Erendis, and their romance, but also Aldarion's romance with the sea, I guess you could say, right? And always wanting to go to sea, always wanting to be at sea. So, let's get into the details of the story here. I lost my place.
So what we basically have here is a good old-fashioned love triangle.
Yeah, well, between two
humans
people,
and a body of water.
Right, and the sea. Yeah.
So maybe an atypical, but still a love triangle.
Maybe you could argue that the third person is what's the name of the
what's the sea
Maya
Valar, the Valar of the sea?
It was a Maya, right?
Was it?
Yeah, that they call out at one point.
I thought there was a Valar that ruled the sea. Is there not?
Well, there is Ulmo, but then there's but I was thinking of there was discussion last time about
that's right. At the dinner.
Yeah.
Where they refer to Erendis as like so and so, like, yeah. And she gets really mad.
Right.
About being associated with them.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. And what is the name? Ase and Uinen.
Right, Uinen. Yes.
Yeah. So now I don't think she was mentioned in this part of the story, but
no,
maybe you can make the argument that that's this love triangle there. So okay, so let's pick up with the story this week. We get the background that talks about how really within 3 years there's supposed to be a wedding after a betrothal. It's kind of bad etiquette for there not to be. But Aldarion, it becomes clear that Aldarion still has this pull to the sea. He wants to go back to sea. Mm-hmm. It says, as the days passed, Erendis marked that he now often fell silent in company when others were gay, and if she looked towards him, suddenly she saw his eyes upon her. And then her heart was shaken, for the blue eyes of Aldarion seemed to her now gray and cold, yet she perceived as it were a hunger in his gaze. That look she had seen too often before and feared what it boded, but she said nothing. At that Nuneth, who marked all that passed, was glad, for words may open wounds, as she said. Ere long Aldarion and Erendis rode away, returning to Armenelos, and as they drew further from the sea, he grew merrier again. Still he said nothing to her of his trouble, for indeed he was at war within himself and irresolute. So that gives us a little bit of a picture of how he's feeling internally. There's still this conflict within him, and that he's still very much drawn to the sea, even though he does truly love. Because it makes a point that he does truly love Erendis. It's not like he's like fallen out of love with Erendis or something like that, right? He does truly love her, but he's just filled with this sea longing, right? Mm-hmm. And it's clear that this is really a part of who he is. So let's see here. So skipping a little bit ahead to he meets with Meneldor, and they have a conversation about this, and it's kind of the same thing we've seen in the past, where there seemed to be kind of a thawing of their relationship in recent years, whereas they used to butt heads about Aldarion's draw to this, being drawn to the sea. Meneldor just didn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And Meneldor, it seemed to kind of, they'd seemed to kind of, mended their relationship, reconciled.
Mm-hmm.
And Meneldor, it starts to kind of, the old cracks start to appear again in their relationship. And we also get a good picture of Aldarion's of his conversation with Erendis. So,
I think Meneldor, he, I think he's genuinely concerned for his son. Like, I don't think I know that they don't really understand each other,
mm-hmm.
but I don't think he initiated this conversation, like, to reopen the cracks, if you will. Like, it says that he was grieved and pitied his son,
mm-hmm.
but he did not understand his trouble. So, I don't think he was trying to start anything. I think he was trying to help him.
Right. No. Yeah. And I wasn't trying to imply that he was trying to start anything.
No, I just wanted to clarify
but
that.
it's more, I think there's an interesting line in here where it talks, where Aldarion tries to make the argument that, he says, smiths may smithy and horsemen ride and miners delve when they are betrothed. Therefore, why may not mariners sail? And the king says, if smiths remained 5 years at the anvil, few would be smiths' wives. And mariners' wives are few, and they endure what they must, for such is their livelihood and their necessity. The king's heir is not a mariner by trade, nor is he under necessity. And there are other needs than livelihood that drive. And so Aldarion says there are other needs than livelihood that drive a man, and there are yet many years to spare.
So really, the crux of the issue here is Aldarion's absence.
Right.
Right. If he would content himself with just going on shorter voyages,
right,
it really wouldn't be an issue. The problem is that he stays away for half a decade or more when he goes.
Mm-hmm.
So it just seems so excessive.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, he does. I mean, these long voyages, you kind of wonder to yourself, like, why don't you just take like shorter voyages, like go away for, go sailing for a couple of weeks, and maybe there's this need to actually go to some other land, like just to have a destination where you've gone, right? To have that destination.
Yeah.
So. And
then he tries to blame Erendis, and he's like, she held back well nigh 12 years when I was eager.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, don't even. I mean, I was very annoyed by that. He's trying to blame Erendis for the fact that they're not actually engaged.
Yeah,
I was ready and she wasn't, and now she's ready and I'm not, and.
Yeah, I don't know at this point whether to make, how to feel about Aldarion. I mean, it becomes a little, I guess at some point it just becomes this thing where it's like, you're acting pretty entitled, dude. Like, I know you're the heir, and you've probably always had people kissing your butt and telling you that you're wonderful and all these sorts of things, but you do have responsibilities towards other people, and you may have this intense sea longing, and I mean, I understand that everybody has their things that drive them, and that they're like aspirational, like want to do, things that they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point you also have responsibilities towards other people.
Right.
And, to leave those things behind or to like put those things aside and choose to kind of reject them is not good.
To reject the people that you're responsible to.
Yeah, well, I guess it's just like the idea of you have a duty, right?
Right.
And as the king's heir, you do, right?
Yeah.
You have expectations, and yes, I know it's funny because of the parallels with The Crown, right, that we've been watching on Netflix, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have the King Edward thing where he abdicated the throne way back when, and all of a sudden Elizabeth, her father was the one who took over being king, but he didn't think he was going to be king ever, and then Elizabeth takes over as queen, right?
Yeah.
And there's this strong theme throughout the show of like you could choose to abdicate, but somebody else is going to have to pick up the slack.
Right.
And that's a lot of slack to pick up. And, so you're like, you've got this question of like, are you going to live up to your duties, even though it might not be the thing that your heart is ultimately drawn to, right? Are you going to choose that path? Or are you going to choose to follow your heart? And, there's all this stuff today about, everybody wants to say, oh, just follow your heart today. But really, like, following your heart can be a recipe for, can often be a recipe for doing evil to others, right?
Right. And it can also be very selfish.
Yeah.
I feel like Aldarion is just being incredibly selfish here.
Mm-hmm.
All he's thinking about is himself.
Yeah.
And what he wants. And he's paying no heed to how it's affecting the people around him.
Right. I mean, I don't think he's complete. Like psychopath, or like psychopath's the wrong term, but I don't think he's like completely heartless. I think he does care about these people. It's not, I don't get the sense that he's acting like a spoiled brat. It's just more like he has this really strong longing, and no one's ever succeeded in putting him in his place and being like, you need to stop this and
I think his dad is trying.
Yeah, but there's the whole thing about his dad, like the character of his father, like the personality of his father is not a very like strong personality.
True.
That's one of the things that that they called out at the beginning of the story. And so, and he does, and then Aldarion does seem to have a strong personality, right?
Yes.
So the father doesn't have a strong personality, and the son does, and so there's Meneldor just doesn't seem capable of putting his son in his place, and
that's true, yeah,
and being like, look, dude, I understand that you have these things that you want to do. I would love to just sit in a tower looking at the stars all the time, but I can't because I'm king, and you're the king's heir, and for you to be going on these voyages all the time, especially now that you should be getting married soon, this is bad for everyone in Númenor.
Mm-hmm. It is. Yeah, it's affecting everyone.
So
he should have just, he should have just pulled the Alec Baldwin, right? For goodness sakes. Right?
We'd all love to flee to the cleave. Yeah.
Have lunch with Little Richard.
Yeah, the 30 Rock reference.
Yeah, but we control ourselves.
That's right.
Aldarion is not controlling himself.
For God's sake, Lemon, we'd all love to flee to the cleave, club out at the flats, and have lunch with Little Richard. We control ourselves.
Thank you.
Great line.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. He is, Aldarion is not, he's not being very considerate.
Yeah. So we shift next to his next conversation with Erendis.
Oh, wait, can I say one more thing?
Sure.
The other thing that like super annoyed me about this part was how, like, when Meneldor starts talking to Aldarion about this, Aldarion just like assumes that Erendis has gone to his dad and like complained.
Yeah.
Which I think like that was so uncool. It says that then Aldarion's heart was hardened, for these words recalled his speech with Erendis as they passed through. How do you say that? Amere? Where the sheep live.
Yes. Amere.
And he thought, but untruly, that she had consulted with his father. So he just like jumped to the conclusion that Erendis went behind his back and complained to her future father-in-law, which she didn't. And now I think that definitely is going to have an impact on this conversation that he's about to have with Erendis.
Right.
Which, just don't jump to assumptions. 'Cause,
Yeah.
Just can't do it.
Don't jump to conclusions.
Yeah, don't make assumptions. Don't jump to conclusions.
That's right.
Yep.
So we got Aldarion. He does go to Erendis, and he basically his proposal is, can you wait a little longer? And I'd like to go to sea again. Can you wait a little longer to get married? He can see the grief in her face, and he was actually moved. It says he was moved, so he's not completely heartless, right?
Not completely.
I mean, he's selfish, but he's not completely heartless,
right?
And then so seeing the look, kind of the the grief in her face at the proposal of waiting longer to get married, he says, "It shall be now, and what we'll do is we'll build this great ship, and it can be the queen's house on the water, and we'll go voyaging together." And she's like, "No, that's not what we're going to do, because I don't like the sea."
I wonder why. Like, I wonder why she's so set against the sea.
Yeah.
You know, I was kind of all in her court for a while, but now I'm kind of like, why is she not willing to meet him halfway? You know? I mean, I wonder if there's, I don't know, maybe we'll come to it later or whatever, but I kind of wish she would give it a chance.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Well, she says, to the woods of Númenor, my heart is given. So it's almost kind of like a, not a love triangle, but a love quadrangle. Or square. Rectangle. Love rectangle.
Quadrangle sounds better.
Yeah, quadrangle.
Quadrangle.
No one says that.
But
all
it
right.
sounds cool.
So, because her heart's given to the woods of Númenor, so she doesn't want to leave, and she says, "And alas, if for love of you I took to ship, I should not return. It is beyond my strength to endure, and out of sight of land I should die." So there is that. I mean, she really thinks that if she went to sea for a long time, like, she would die.
That's a little dramatic.
Well,
what, was she going to die of seasickness?
I mean, it's a better argument than, like, well, I just have to go to sea, right? Like,
well, it's like,
I mean, they both seem like they're very dramatic people in this way,
right? Yeah. I mean, Aldarion is not saying like, "Oh, I shall die if I have to stay on land."
Right.
So, she's yeah. I feel like she's being a little overly dramatic, but I don't know. Maybe the sea would kill her.
Yeah.
Maybe she would die of a broken heart, not being able to see her sheep.
So, at this point, Aldarion is just kind of like, doesn't know what to say, and essentially he just decides he's just going to go to sea again for a while. So that's his answer. That's his answer. Like, It's like, well, okay, I guess we'll just have to wait a while to get married then. And so he takes off and goes on a voyage, and is gone for 6 years.
6 years.
Yep.
Yep.
He does couple of side notes. While he's gone, he finds the haven of Vinyalande, now wholly ruined, the haven that he had helped create in Middle Earth, and great seas had brought to nothing all his labors to restore it.
So was it flooded, or like what? How was it destroyed?
I think it was just a combination of like neglect, probably storms,
just the elements,
and well, yeah. I feel like there was also discussions like people may have attacked it, because it says men near the coast were growing afraid of the Númenorians, or were becoming openly hostile, and Aldarion heard rumors of some lord in Middle Earth who hated the men of the ships, which I think is the first reference here to Sauron in this story. So, who of course had started to kind of come back right around the time that I believe just a little before Aldarion was born. But I don't think he's really even known to be like known well by the Númenorians at this point.
Okay.
So finally nevertheless he does come back, and comes back and basically he's like, all right, it's time, let's get married now. So they do it. And in the 870th year of the Second Age, Aldarion and Erendis were wedded in Armanelos, and in every house there was music, and in all the streets men and women sang. So, and they lived happily ever after.
Wrong.
Not.
Psych.
Yeah. It says, in the morning before the feast, Aldarion gazed out from the window of the bedchamber, which looked west over sea. "See, Erendis," he cried, "there is a ship speeding to haven, and it is no ship of Númenor, but one such as neither you nor I shall ever set foot upon, even if we would." Then Erendis looked forth, and she saw a tall white ship with white birds turning in the sunlight all about it, and its sails glimmered with silver as with foam at the stem it rowed towards the harbor. Thus the Eldar graced the wedding of Erendis for love of the people of the Westlands, who were closest to their friendship. Their ship was laden with flowers for the adornment of the feast, so that all that sat there when evening was come were crowned with Eleanor and sweet Lisuin, whose fragrance brings heart's ease. Minstrels they brought also, singers who remembered songs of elves and men in the days of Nargothrond and Gondolin long ago. And many of the Eldar, high and fair, were seated among men at the tables. But the people of Andunier, looking upon the blissful company, said that none were more fair than Erendis. And they said that her eyes were as bright as were the eyes of Morwen Elethwin of old, or even as those of Avalanye. And then the Eldar bring some gifts. They bring, for Aldarion, they give a sapling tree whose bark was snow white. And then for Erendis, they give her these 2 birds, right? So I thought it was funny with the little interchange between Aldarion and the elves with the tree. They're like, here's this beautiful, wonderful tree. And he's like, oh, I thank you. The wood of such a tree must be precious indeed. Right. So his immediate thought is like not the.
Can I build a ship out of it?
Yeah. Can I chop this down and build a ship out of it?
Right.
Or plant this and maybe in a few years have many of them and chop those down. And they said, maybe, we know not. None has ever been hewn. It bears cool leaves in summer and flowers in winter. It is for this that we prize it. And then these birds, Erendis receives, they're gray with golden beaks and feet. They sing sweetly to one another with many cadences never repeated through a long thrill of song. But if one were separated from the other, at once they flew together, and they would not sing apart. So, and the Eldar, Erendis says, how shall I keep them? The Eldar say, let them fly and be free, for we have spoken to them and named you, and they will stay wherever you dwell. They mate for their life, and that is long. Maybe there will be many such birds to sing in the gardens of your children. So,
what a beautiful gift.
Well, what would you expect? Anything less from the elves?
No, nope. Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
No.
Yeah. So, 2 more years pass, and they have a daughter named where is it? It is Ankalame. They have a daughter named Ankalame, and Erendis is like hoping that now this will finally get Aldarion like to stop worrying so much about the sea, and especially like that he'll want a son, and so he'll be more likely to stick around. But
no dice. Nope.
As you would probably, it's kind of, the behavior is becoming predictable right now at this point, right?
Indeed.
It says a little later, it may be that she struck near the truth, for Aldarion was a man. I'm sorry. So going back a little bit, she's in conversation with her mother, Nuneth, and she's recounting something that she had said long before. Ships he may love, my daughter, for those are made by men's minds and hands. But I think that it is not the winds or the great waters that so burn his heart, nor yet the sight of strange lands, but some heat in his mind or some dream that pursues him. And I found this really interesting. It says, and it may be that she struck near the truth, for Aldarion was a man long-sighted, and he looked forward to days when the people would need more room and greater wealth. And whether he himself knew this clearly or no, he dreamed of the glory of Númenor and the power of its kings, and he sought for footholds whence they could step to wider dominion. This is a really interesting twist in this to me, because, of course, one of the themes that we explored earlier when we were going through our discussions of Númenor and its downfall is that there was this gradual transition that happened from wanting to like kind of explore Middle Earth in a friendly way, like come back to Middle Earth. The Númenorians come back to Middle Earth in a friendly way, and maybe establish some trade, tell them more of the Blessed Realm and of the Valar and these kinds of things, and maybe like just raise them up, right? Raise the men of Middle Earth up, and I'd never really gotten anything from Aldarion that said anything other than that, but now we have this note of like maybe he's thinking of greater wealth and more ambitious and powerful thoughts, more room, greater wealth. He dreamed of the glory of Númenor and the power of its kings, right? And he sought for footholds whence they could step to wider dominion.
Kind of like Napoleon.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is the turn that you don't want to see happen, because this means that when you start caring about these things and the glory of your realm and greater wealth and power, that's when things start to go wrong, right? And you've gotten away from the thing that you were about in the first place, right? So, I didn't get that. It's weird. This was interesting to me, but I don't understand. I guess I don't understand if it's saying that Aldarion is definitely like this, or if he was like this all along, or if this is just like something that maybe is starting to happen within him. So, but Númenor, so I guess Númenor had expressed something similar to Erendis a long time ago. She had just suspected there's something even deeper within him. And I don't even know that Aldarion knows it necessarily. I think he's just drawn to something more than just, it's like, I just don't want to sit on the island all the time. Right?
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of like, pick your hobby. Like what's your hobby, and what do you love doing? What would you do with most of your time if you could spend most of your time doing it, right? And then it's like you have that thing. Maybe it's like being like writing songs, being a musician, or painting, or something like that. And then it's like the ambition of there's the thing that comes beyond that, where once you've kind of made that and you're able to do a lot of that, then there's the like, well, if I could get make a lot of money doing it, and then get a lot of power doing it, that's when something starts to go wrong.
Yeah, because the motive is messed up.
Yeah. So he builds this. So during this time, Aldarion builds this great ship that is called Turofanto, the Wooden Whale. That's the nickname. That's not what it's actually called, but that's what people call it because it's so big. It says. It's like a castle with tall masts and great sails like clouds, bearing men and stores enough for a town. So this is a big ship.
Yeah. And he doesn't even tell Erendis he's doing this.
Yeah.
Which I think is totally messed up.
Yep.
She actually has to confront him about it.
And, you do hear that in conjunction with what we were just talking about. And it's like a castle with tall masts, right? It's like a sea castle. That sounds like a warship, right?
It does.
That doesn't sound like just a friendly voyaging ship, right?
Right.
It doesn't sound like a pleasure yacht. It sounds like a warship.
It does sound like a warship. Yeah. Something that's meant to be intimidating.
Right.
Carry lots of supplies and people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And supposedly lots of soldiers maybe too. So, yeah. So he builds this ship, and then when Ankalame is 4 years old, he decides that he wants to go to sea again. And he tries to kind of talk Erendis into being on board with it, but she's not going to be. They've got a daughter now.
Yeah,
they've got a child now.
They have a kid.
So, and she recognizes this. She's like, he says to her, let's see. But let us not be wroth, even if we are not of like mind. Look in your mirror, Erendis. You are beautiful, and no shadow of age is there yet. You have time to spare to my deep need. 2 years. 2 years is all that I ask. And she says, say rather, 2 years I will take, whether you will or no, right? Which, is really the truth of the matter there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
He wakes up one morning and leaves for another voyage. So.
Yep.
And Ankalame... Ankalame kind of, there's a sad little scene with Ankalame where he, I think to say she tried to, she clings to him, and he set her down quickly and rode off. So
that's gotta be so, it was, it's probably hard enough on Erendis when he would leave before, but now to see that even their child isn't, like, the fact that they have a child is not enough to keep him with them.
Right.
That's just it's driving the dagger deeper. Because, I think it'd be really hard for Erendis just not to completely despair at this point.
Yeah.
Like, if a kid can't keep him there, like, what could? What could? It was hard enough. We were like, okay, well, I really wish I was enough, but I'm not. Okay, but now me plus a kid is still not enough. My heart just really breaks for Erendis, especially knowing how much she does. She truly loves him. And what's interesting is, back, I think we talked about in the first section of this, when we discussed the first part of the story, I can't help but think that she kind of saw this coming. I think that's why she tried to put him off.
Yeah.
But it was like she couldn't. It was like her fate had been sealed, and now she's living it, and it's still hard, even if you kind of saw it coming. It's still hard.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. There's a very strong element of fatedness to this story, right?
Yeah. It was almost like it was against her will.
I don't know the end to the story yet, so
well, neither do I.
So you're wondering what tragedy is it building to, right? But so with Aldarion gone, Erendis decides that she can't even stand the sight of the trees anymore, and so she takes Ankalame and they move to the sheeplands, right? So they move to the sheeplands of Amarie, and basically like she kind of sets up a life for them where like she can't even stand the sight of men anymore. Basically, like she's just done with men in general,
and she's turning her daughter against men. I mean, she's just so bitter.
Yeah, which I mean, honestly, like. So Aldarion's definitely got some issues, but I mean, that's pretty extreme of Erendis too, right? I mean, I understand that her husband now he's got plenty of issues, but that's a pretty extreme thing to do. Is like just kind of push even any man out of sight, right?
Yeah.
And especially like to do that to your daughter, right? That just seems extreme. So,
yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. So we also have this thing with the birds and basically, I think this is a symbolic move by Erendis. Like she's basically like tries to get rid of the elven birds because she no longer, I think they were supposed to be symbolic of a happy marriage, and she's just like, sweet fools, fly away. And then their song ceased, and they flew up over the trees. Thrice they wheeled above the roofs, and then they went away westwards. That evening they settled upon the sill of the chamber of the house of her father, where she had lain with Aldarion on their way from the feast in Andunier. And there Nuneth and Berengar found them on the morning of the next day. But when Nuneth held out her hands to them, they flew steeply up and fled away, and she watched them until they were specks in the sunlight, speeding to the sea, back to the land whence they came. So the elven birds, I guess they've gone back to. It says I believe. Did it say they went westward?
Yes.
Yeah. So they've gone back to. They've gone back to Valinor, so to the Blessed Realm. So I hope they make it over the sea. It's a long way for a couple of like dove-like birds to fly. It seems.
Yes, that would be quite a journey.
Yeah.
For them.
But these are elven birds, so I'm sure they'll make it.
Yes.
They can pull it off.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
It makes me a little sad that Erendis didn't, that she didn't send word herself to her parents about what was going on.
Right.
Which I felt like her mom and she were pretty close. But it's almost like she's just, she's just kind of locked herself in her little box and in her sheep world, and the only person she wants to see or talk to is her daughter. And I think that's kind of unhealthy.
Yeah, well, I think probably for her, it's like, what's the point, right?
Well, I mean, it's, or you just think about your parents, and you're like, these are some of the people that love me most in the world, right? And, I mean, if I were Erendis' mother, I would be super hurt.
Yeah.
That my daughter didn't even dare to, maybe she didn't want to worry her or stress her out or whatever. She's like, oh, there's nothing she can do. There's no need to tell her. But just so that they could be there to give them the opportunity to support her during this difficult time. And she didn't even do that. So it made me sad.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, that kind of brings us to the end of the chapter, unless there's anything else that you wanted to mention.
Well, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
What's his name? Aldarion?
Uh-huh.
He didn't come back after 2 years.
Yeah. So we'll see.
We'll see what happens.
We got a little cliffhanger there, so we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah.
So I mean, 2 years, really? I mean, like, that's too short a voyage for Aldarion. So I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be too surprised, if he just decided to stay out longer. So
No, it's not shocking. But it's still disappointing because you would like to think, like, okay, maybe if he can't just not go, maybe at least he could stick to his word and only be gone for a certain amount of time. But even that seems like it's just too hard for him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll have to see what happens.
We shall indeed.
I mean, especially like his daughter is now 7.
Yeah.
You know? So.
A lot of change happens in 3 years with a child. Yeah, so.
Yeah, he's missing out on so much. He doesn't even realize it. Or doesn't even care.
Well, and 4 years old, too. Like, that's, I mean, your child is not going to have many memories of you. I mean, it'd be some, but, like, you know, I mean, think of, like, your earliest memories, right? Like, you don't have, you know, I don't have a lot of memory. I mean, I maybe have a few, but I don't have a lot of memories before, like, 5 years old, probably.
Yeah, I don't either.
So, I don't know. How much will she even remember him?
Yeah.
At this point?
Yeah, I know. It's kind of sad.
So we'll continue with Aldarion and Erendis on the next episode and probably the one after that as well. Once again, you can send correspondence to tolkienroadpodcast@gmail.com and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And don't forget to leave us that 5-star rating over on iTunes. Thanks to our patrons, and we'll give to our high-tier patrons a little shout-out, as we promise, with that tier. Eric B.
Daniel P.
David B.
Robert F.
Chuck F.
Andrew T.
Ish of the Hammer.
Chris L.
James L.
Al T.
Zeke F.
James A.
Emilio P.
Sharon S.
Shannon S.
What did I say?
Sorry, it's far away. Sorry, Shannon. It's far
Shannon.
away. It's far away from her eyes. So
my bad.
Our eyes, you know, our eyesight's.
I'm getting old. Okay, Sharon S. Sorry, Shannon S.
There we go. Teresa C.
Azia V.
And Brian O. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, guys.
And thanks to all of the rest of our patrons as well. We appreciate you all and your contributions. And
indeed we do.
Thanks to everyone for listening. We will talk at you next time.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.